standing strong and tall. Yeah, this is the Bullvine coming on the air, sharing the stories of the folks who care. Profiles of passion, voices of the trade, dairy strong legends being made. Yeah, this is the Bullvine coming on the air, sharing the stories of the folks who care. Profiles of passion, voices of the trade, dairy strong.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive, brought to you by the Bullvine, where we cut through dairy industry noise to get you the insights that actually matter for your operation.
And today, we're peeling back the layers on a story that is, it's really required reading for anyone managing genetics in the modern era.
I agree.
This feature piece challenges everything the industry tells us about index rankings and, price tags. It's got explosive history, current warnings, and a massive paradox right at its heart.
It truly does. We are deep diving into the legacy of Carol Prelude Mtoto, the Italian specialist bull. When he hit the UK market in, 1998? He was a total anomaly.
Oh, completely.
He was priced at a painful 40 pounds per straw, which was, quite literally 4 times the average commercial volume bull at the time.
Yeah.
And to add insult to injury, his paper proof showed moderate, even, mediocre production.
And the irony here is just stunning, and it's really the core thesis of this deep dive. A bull that looked like a financial mistake on paper expensive, low-ranked for milk yield became the genetic cornerstone of billion-dollar dynasties.
Right.
He arguably saved the structural integrity of the Holstein breed in Europe and, beyond. We're going to trace that journey, and critically, we're going to show you how that exact history, that pattern of chasing flashy production while ignoring durability, it's repeating itself right now with genomic selection.
Okay, let's unpack this and set the stage for why this matters to the farmer listening today. We have to rewind the clock a bit.
We do.
Back to the late 1990s. This was the peak era of the production at all costs mentality.
Right.
An echo chamber created by decades of relentless focus on the bulk tank. Volume, volume, volume.
And the stakes for understanding this history are, they're immense. We talk to farm consultants constantly. They show us the hard data that separates the survivors from those who failed. Think back to the 2008 economic crisis. Input costs soared, milk prices tanked, and that volatility just crushed operations.
I remember those times. It was absolutely brutal.
It was. And the data shows a really clear pattern. Farms that bought the cheap, high-production, high-TPI bulls in the late 90s, the ones that gave you those spectacular first lactation numbers.
Yeah, the ones that look great on paper.
Exactly. Those were often the ones who couldn't weather the storm. Their cows just broke down, they fell apart, replacement rates skyrocketed right when money was tightest, they were hemorrhaging cash.
So the high initial yield was essentially a trap.
It was a trap, exactly. But the farms that invested in Mtoto's survival genetics, paying that premium for durability, for health, and for, a third or fourth lactation.
You were the ones still standing.
They were still profitable. They were still milking these quiet 5th and 6th lactation cows that were just doing their job without a vet bill. That investment decision 25 years ago is often the difference between still farming today and seeing your fields become suburban development.
Wow.
The fundamental, often overlooked lesson here is that longevity is the only true sustainable engine of farm profitability.
And before we dive into all the details, we have to tackle the most controversial aspect head on, because it's a bit of a mind bender.
It is.
If you look up Mtoto's current genetic proofs, let's say in the August 2025 UK evaluations, the numbers look like a catastrophe. He shows negative production traits like minus 18 kilograms of milk and a profitable lifetime index, a PLI, of minus 112 pounds.
That is the ultimate paradox. On paper, if you filtered your catalog today for anything above a neutral PLI, you would skip him entirely. An AI technician pitching him based on those raw numbers would be, laughed off the farm.
But we are arguing that the negative proof is actually a measure of his success, not his failure.
Precisely.
His genetics were so successful at correcting those Bell-era frailties that they lifted the structural and health baseline of the entire Holstein population. We're going to spend time later explaining the base change phenomenon, but think of it this way. He was so good at fixing things that the fix became the new normal.
And this leads to our ultimate warning. The bull that's topping all the genomic lists today, the one that looks spectacular on paper, might just be tomorrow's financial disaster for your operation.
Just like the high production, low longevity Bell daughters were back in the late 1990s.
We have to learn from this history, or we are absolutely doomed to repeat it.
Okay, let's start the investigation by defining the colossal problem that Mtoto was engineered to solve. And that means we have to talk about the Bell legacy.
Yes, Carlin M. Ivanhoe Bell.
He arrived on the scene in the late 80s and early 90s, and for lack of a better phrase, he just revolutionized the bulk tank. He was the definition of production, putting an average of, 1,700 pounds above the herd average into the tanks?
He was a superstar, no question. Farmers were ecstatic because they could immediately see the return. But the phrase, no such thing as a free lunch, was never more true than with Bell.
Right.
That immense production came at an immense physiological cost, something the farmer only discovered, a year or two into the daughters' productive lives.
The sources detail what happened next.
Mm-hmm.
The Bell paradox was essentially production wrapped in tissue paper. Those genetics drove structural frailty across the board.
And we're not talking about small things. We're talking about poorly attached udders that hung low, increasing the risk of injury and infection.
Okay.
We're talking about cows prone to devastating metabolic disorders, specifically milk fever and ketosis, because they just couldn't partition the energy required for that spectacular output. And crucially, weak legs that simply could not sustain the load and the relentless production pace.
Producers who managed those Bell daughters during that era described the barn floor as a constant battlefield. I mean, that sounds exhausting.
It was a management nightmare. You had cows everywhere standing with splayed rear legs, trying to balance these broken down udders. You had chronic lameness issues starting in the second lactation, and they were perpetually struggling to breed back.
So the replacement rate must have been through the roof.
Unsustainable. Research run by major universities documented that Bell daughters live significantly shorter productive lives, often 2 to 3 years less than cows with more balanced genetics.
Wait, I want to drill down on the economics of that.
Right.
If you're getting, say, 1,700 pounds of extra milk in the first lactation, but you lose 2 full lactations of productive life, where does the balance sheet actually land?
That's the million-dollar question, because that's where the industry got fooled. The spectacular first lactation production gains were almost entirely negated or even reversed by the high replacement costs and the vet bills.
Right.
The estimated cost to rear a heifer to first calving in the late 90s was substantial. It easily offset the marginal gain in that first year. If a cow only lasts 2.5 lactations, you are constantly pouring money into raising replacements just to maintain your herd size. You are running on a genetic treadmill.
So the industry had, through this relentless focus on volume, effectively bred out the necessary resilience. They had created these production monsters wrapped in tissue paper.
Precisely. By the time Mtoto was born in 1993, the industry, especially in Europe where environmental pressures and longevity demands were higher, was desperately searching for wearability, for structural correctives, for genetics that could handle long-term stress.
They needed a fix.
They did. That structural deficiency is what led enlightened breeders to prioritize traits like longevity and udder conformation, because the most expensive cow is not the one producing less milk. The most expensive cow is the one you have to replace too soon.
And that desperate need for correction created the perfect vacuum for a specialist bull like Mtoto. But the correction didn't originate from the same production-focused genetic programs that created the problem.
No, it could.
It had to come from a different philosophy entirely.
Which brings us to the unique environment of our second deep dive segment, the Italian reality check. This is where conventional wisdom surrounding U.S.-style genetic indices gets utterly challenged. The question is, why did Italy's breeding philosophy diverge so sharply from the North American focus on fluid milk volume?
It all comes down to the end product, doesn't it? In North America, liquid consumption drove genetics. In Italy, the sources state that over 80% of Italian milk was destined for incredibly high-value, quality-controlled cheese production. We're talking Parmigiano Reggiano and Grana Padano.
And these aren't just commodity products. They are protected designation of origin, or PDO, products with exceptionally strict quality requirements.
So those market realities completely dictate the genetic priorities. The Italian National Association, ANFI, they didn't use TPI or PLI in the same way.
No, they relied on the ILQM, the Italian Lactation Quality Merit Index. And yes, production was 80% of the weighting, but that remaining 20% was heavily focused on type, with udder conformation being absolutely central to their scoring system.
But it goes beyond just structure, right? It's about the milk components themselves.
Absolutely. They weren't just looking for volume, they needed specific protein quality. This is where we talk about kappa casein content.
Okay, for the listener, break that down. Why does kappa casein matter so much for cheese?
It's crucial for efficient and stable curd formation during cheese making. If you lack the right type and quantity of this protein, your cheese yield suffers, and the quality of the final cheese wheel is compromised. Mtoto was bred to boost protein quality, ensuring high cheese yield efficiency, a factor that production indices often overlook in favor of just sheer volume.
And they also needed ruggedness. These cows had to handle the Po Valley environment and the long, sustained production cycles required for those high-value cheese dairies.
Right. Functionality, as Italian judge Gianni Beretta noted, was paramount. You needed cows that will last 4, 5, or 6 lactations, producing high-quality milk. Longevity in that environment wasn't nice to have. It was a non-negotiable economic necessity.
So let's analyze Mtoto's pedigree, because it perfectly illustrates how strategically he was designed as a corrective tool for the entire breed. He was built to address the bell flaws without losing the bell production potential.
Exactly. His sire was Ronnieburg Prelude, which brought stature, style, and that essential durability from the legendary Starbuck line. But the maternal side, that provided the necessary counterbalance to the tall, narrow look.
His dam was Dixie Lee Breestar Betsy, a 2-mar Black Star daughter.
And Black Star was the strength and width specialist of his generation. So Prelude gave Mtoto height and dairy character. Black Star gave him that critical width, capacity, and sheer physical strength.
The sources even provide his AAA code, 426. For those unfamiliar, AAA is a system focusing on physical balance. Walk me through why that specific code was the logical corrective fix for the narrow bell daughters who just lacked capacity.
Okay, so the code 426 perfectly signaled a corrective bull for the common structural deficits of the time. The 4 means strength and width, that's targeting heart girth capacity, front end width, and overall body depth, counteracting the narrowness that Bell introduced.
And the 2 and the 6.
The 2 signals stature, so he kept the frame, and the 6 indicates refinement, adding dairy quality and clean bone, making sure the strength wasn't just brute force. Essentially, he was bred to take a frail, high-production cow and wrap it in a durable, robust frame.
But the real genetic masterstroke, the thing that fixed the bell udders, was what they called the chief mark correction.
Yes.
The structural weaknesses and low-hanging udders that Bell transmitted were deep in the pedigree of so many cows. Mtoto's maternal grand dam was sired by Walkway Chief Mark.
And Chief Mark was famous for one thing: transmitting superior, tightly attached udders with correct teat placement. This Bellex Chief Mark cross, facilitated through Mtoto's lineage, is cited as one of the most successful nicks in Holstein history.
So what you're saying is Mtoto was able to carry the high production potential that was locked in the Bell line.
Yes, but the physical deficiencies, the udder flaws, were corrected and packaged with the superior structure provided by Chief Mark.
The farmer translation here is just powerful. Mtoto was literally bred to repair the physical damage inflicted by the previous generation's production obsession.
And the key difference in philosophy was longevity, all driven by that PDO cheese market. Think about the impact of mastitis in a quality market. If your milk has high somatic cell counts, indicating infection or inflammation, the cheese factory won't just penalize you.
They'll reject it.
They reject the milk outright. You lose the sale entirely. Mastitis resistance in this context wasn't some health bonus. It was a hard economic requirement for survival in a quality-driven market. This is why Mtoto's greatest strengths were invisible traits: udder health and somatic cell score.
That brings us perfectly to our third deep dive segment, Follow the Money. We need to quantify the invisible economics of udder health, which ultimately proved that the price tag of 40 pounds was actually a bargain. You mentioned the defining physical trait of Mtoto's daughters: tight teat sphincters.
Yes. They were renowned slow-milking transmitters. In a high-throughput, modern rotary parlor environment where the manager is judged on how many cows they get through per hour, slow milking is viewed as a serious defect.
Because speed is king.
Speed is prioritized above all else. But the source analysis explains the precise physiological trade-off, and this is crucial for understanding the economic mistake the industry was making. Loose sphincters mean fast making, which parlor managers love.
But that loose tissue leaves the door wide open for bacteria to enter the udder post-milking, turning those cows into mastitis magnets.
And Mtoto's genetics transmitted the opposite: tight teat sphincter muscles. This made them snow milkers, yes, which frustrated the staff, but those tight sphincters created a natural physical barrier, an impenetrable defense mechanism against bacterial invasion immediately following milking.
And this resulted in Mtoto achieving health proofs that were just utterly superior. His UK proofs showed an elite somatic cell score of NARIG of 13, a healthy cow index of plus 17, and a lameness advantage of plus 0.7. Let's pause and define what Netter 13 SCC means for the practical farmer.
Okay, so when we talk about SCC scores, a negative number is good, meaning the bull reduces SCC in his daughters. A nadir 13 in the UK system is considered elite. It translates directly to fewer chronic infections, fewer subclinical cases, and therefore higher quality milk checks and far less dumping of unusable milk.
I want to challenge the economics here, though. A lot of farmers hear slow milker, and they immediately think labor costs. If Mtoto's daughters are adding 30 seconds to the milking time for 200 cows, that's real labor money being spent. How do we balance that tangible cost against the invisible savings?
That is the perfect question, and it illustrates why traditional spreadsheets failed to value Mtoto correctly. The parlor manager sees the tangible cost. A hard milker costs maybe 30 or even 50 nevers a year in extra labor because of slower throughput. That's a definite calculated loss.
Okay, so a 50 deverly loss per cow per year. That's one bad.
Now, let's look at the profit from what the sources call the invisible cow. Well, what is the cost of a single severe mastitis case? Conservatively, you lose the milk from the infected quarter, you spend on the vet visit, you spend on antibiotics, you spend time on labor for treatments.
3 times a day for a week.
Right. And you have milk withholding.
Yeah.
That total cost for a single severe case can easily run 300 to 500 euros.
The bull daughter might have 3 or 4 severe cases in a short career.
Exactly. So now, combine the avoided vet bills, the avoided labor, the avoided milk loss, the avoided permanent damage to the udder, and then add the biggest saving of all, avoided culling. By avoiding those problems and getting just 2 or 3 extra profitable lactations, which Mtoto daughters routinely did, you generate 2,000 to 3,000 in additional pure profit per cow over her lifetime.
So we're comparing a certain 50 annual labor cost against a potential 3,000 lifetime profit increase from avoided disaster. The spreadsheets were dead wrong when they only focused on fast milking and volume.
They were catastrophically wrong. The Mtoto cow wasn't spectacular. She was profitable because she was quiet. She cost nothing to keep running. She was the definition of functional resilience.
And that ultimately justifies the famous 40-pound question. When Avencroft introduced him in 1998, he was 40 pounds per straw when competitors like Ulma Prelude Mtoto were 20 pounds and general-purpose volume sires were, 10 pounds, 15 pounds? It required a philosophical leap to steal that money.
It was a strategic investment, not an expense. Farmers weren't paying 40 pounds for production volume. They were paying 40 pounds for an insurance policy. They were buying a targeted solution to expensive systemic problems, mastitis, high replacement rates, structural breakdown that were bleeding their operations dry. That premium price reflected his specialty status and his ability to fix problems that cost 10 times that much to manage.
Forward-thinking producers recognized that value, even if his production proofs were just moderate.
And that strategic, contrarian application of Mtoto is perfectly illustrated in our 4th deep dive segment. The case studies and examples, which led to the birth of the Shottle dynasty. This story is the ultimate example of defying the conventional wisdom of the AI industry.
We're talking about the Pickford family in the UK and their cow, Condon Arrow Sharon, classified EX91. The year is 1999, and Sharon is 8 years old.
8 years old. Think about that in terms of genetic turnover. The industry had fully filtered her out. She was, by all accounts, a genetic antique.
Obsolete.
Yeah. AI companies want young, high genomic heifers to breed from because progress moves so fast. Sharon was considered completely obsolete.
But the Pickfords looked past the hype. They recognized that Sharon possessed the most important genetic trait you can't get from a genomic test: durability. She had survived 8 years of high production, maintained a high classification, and kept breeding back. She was a proven survivor.
Their decision was a calculated wager. They bred this proven survivor, Sharon, to the durability specialist, Mtoto. The goal wasn't just maximizing milk, it was locking in that longevity and adding Mtoto's elite low SCC and udder refinement, specifically to counter the prevailing industry age bias.
And that decision created a dynasty. On July 23, 1999, Pixton Shottle was born. The sources describe Shottle as a perfected Mtoto. He successfully retained the elite low SCC and the functional, correct type of his sire, but he gained the necessary increased milk flow and powerful frame from his dam's high-producing lineage.
The phenomenon that followed was unprecedented, and it confirms the economic theory of the invisible cow. Farmers didn't notice Shottle daughters for their spectacular production. I mean, they were good, but not record breakers. They noticed them for their total lack of drama.
The invisible cow.
Yes. The Shottle daughters rarely needed vet treatment. They bred back easily. They quietly produced for 5, 6, even 7 lactations. This complete lack of management headaches drove what industry analysts called unprecedented reorder rates.
I remember reading about that. It wasn't just a bull selling well. It was repeat business based on actual farm-level performance.
Exactly. The process was a farmer would try 10 straws, see the functional results, the easy calving, the clean udder health, and they would immediately call wanting hundreds more. That right there is the real metric of a bull's value. Customer satisfaction and reorder rates based on durability, not just the initial glossy index ranking.
Schottle's dominance then went global. In 2008, he achieved the #1 TPI ranking in the United States. I mean, think about that. A UK-bred bull from an Italian sire focusing on cheese genetics and an old cow dominating North American genetics, which was focused on volume.
It just demonstrates the desperate global need for that kind of correction. His legacy is difficult to quantify fully. Over 1.17 million doses sold globally, and an estimated economic impact in the billions, predominantly through saved costs. Reduced mastitis treatments, fewer involuntary culls, and extended productive lives.
Mtoto and Schottle proved that durability and consistency are the fundamental drivers of long-term profit, not the spectacular short-term production highs.
No doubt.
So, we've established that Mtoto was a genetic giant, a revolutionary for his time, but we have to return to the elephant in the room that we teased earlier. Why are Mtoto's 2025 proofs negative? Milk minus 18 kilograms, PLI minus 112 pounds. Why does the bull that saved the breed look like a disaster on today's catalog?
This is where we need to slow down and really understand the concept of base change reality. The Holstein breed average, which determines the genetic proof rankings, resets approximately every 5 years to reflect the progress made by the entire population.
Okay, think of it like Olympic records. Every 4 years, the average performance of top athletes gets better, so a gold medal performance from 1998 might not even qualify for the finals in 2025.
That's a perfect analogy. Mtoto's genetics were so successful at introducing health, longevity, and structural soundness that they lifted the floor of the entire population. The cow that was the exceptional standard bearer for udder quality and structural correctness in 1998 is, by today's standards, merely average.
Because the average cow today is just structurally and functionally superior to the average cow 30 years ago.
Largely thanks to Mtoto's influence. So those negative production figures reflect 30 years of intense, successful selection pressure on the breed as a whole. It means the breed has successfully caught up to and surpassed Mtoto's production capability while retaining the durability he provided.
And you have to look at his health traits. They're still there.
Critically, yes. Look at his health traits. His SEC score still sits at -13. Those functional genes survived 30 years of selection because they work. Genomic analysis confirms his foundational influence. His genetics consistently show up in analyses of genes in common with the current elite population, making up 6.44% of the shared genetics.
That is incredible.
That level of persistent influence is the ultimate proof of value.
This historical perspective gives us a critical warning for the present moment. If Mtoto represented the correction for the disastrous Bell era, are we now, today, facing Bell 2.0?
We are, and we are repeating the mistake at warp speed because of the power of genomics. In the 1980s, it took years of progeny testing to realize the Bell daughters were breaking down. Today, we can saturate the breed with similar high-production, low-resilience genetics in 18 months.
18 months.
We are aggressively selecting for high TPI, which is heavily skewed toward production and component yield, while dangerously underweighting the survival traits that are often harder to predict accurately from a calf's DNA.
We've seen the consultants' reports, and they paint a terrifyingly familiar picture.
They quote the exact same pattern. Herds using only the top 10 TPI bulls see absolutely beautiful, spectacular first lactations. Then structural or metabolic problems emerge by the second, and those high TPI cows are often gone, culled, or struggling by the third. Genomic selection has simply created fragility at a much faster rate.
Wait, I need more detail on that frailty problem. What specifically is breaking down in these modern top-indexed cows?
It's the same Bell era mechanics, just expressed differently due to, modern environmental pressures.
Yeah.
We see early metabolic collapse when the cow's energy partitioning system can't keep up with the component yield demand. That leads to poor fertility and an increased risk of milk fever or ketosis.
Okay.
We see foot and leg issues, specifically digital dermatitis because their frame is pushed too hard. And worst of all, reproductive failure is soaring, meaning they simply fail to breed back, forcing involuntary culls after the first first or second lactation.
And this fragility is compounded by the diversity crisis, isn't it?
Exactly. The research is scary. It shows the Holstein breed's effective population size has collapsed to maybe 50 to 100 animals. We are increasing the risk of inbreeding and disease susceptibility while still chasing that singular high TPI metric. We're putting all our genetic eggs into a single fragile basket.
So we're forgetting the lesson Mtoto taught us.
It seems like it. Mtoto taught us to diversify and prioritize resilience. The industry seems to be forgetting that lesson in the pursuit of a higher index rank.
So if we need to apply the brakes on this genetic speed run and diversify our selection, where do we find today's Mtoto? We know he's not going to be topping the TPI list. He'll probably be expensive, and his production will look moderate.
The contrarian argument is powerful. The most profitable bull in the catalog for many commercial operations, the one who will keep your farm running until 2040, is likely hiding down at TPI rank, hashtag 300 to hashtag 400.
That low.
Yeah. He misses the spectacular production metrics that grab the headlines, but he possesses the comprehensive durability traits that actually make you money.
Okay, so I'm the farmer listening right now. I'm skeptical of paying premium prices for moderate production. Walk me through the criteria. What specific survival genetics define the 2025 Mtoto profile needed for the modern dairy environment? Volatile input costs, climate change, robotic milking demands.
We need to define the survival traits with precision. First, reproductive efficiency. That bull needs daughter pregnancy rates, DPR, at plus 3.0 or better.
Why that number specifically?
Because a cow that breeds back easily is a cow that stays in the herd. It's that simple. For robotic systems, consistent breeding is non-negotiable for parlor flow and efficiency.
What about health? Mtoto's specialty.
We need elite SCC scores, definitely under 2.7 in the US system, or the equivalent of Mtoto's -13 in the UK system. This means mastitis resistance. Second, we need metabolic resilience cows that don't crash in early lactation when pushed for high components. They manage their energy demand without resorting to chronic negative energy balance.
And finally, structure.
And finally, functional structure, robust feet and legs that can handle concrete floors and the specific movement demands of robotic gates.
If that bull is ranked hashtag 350 in TPI, his price might still be high, say $50 or $60 a straw, because the AI companies know the functional value is premium.
It will be.
This means the farmer still has to overcome the exact same psychological barrier the Pickfords face with the 40-pound Mtoto straw back in 1998.
That's the key takeaway. You must recognize that paying a premium for a moderate production bull isn't an expense. It's the lowest cost insurance policy you can buy against metabolic and structural breakdown. The price reflects the avoided disaster. Mtoto and Shottle prove that durability and consistency lasting 6 or 7 lactations are the real quiet engines of long-term profit, entirely outweighing the spectacular short-term production highs.
It's about shifting the focus from income maximization to cost minimization. The bull that costs you the least in vet bills and replacement heifers is the most profitable bull.
At the end of the day, that's it.
All right, this has been a profound historical and current analysis. The farmer listening just finished morning milking, they're heading to the feed store, catalog open, or perhaps they're logging into their breeding software. What are the 3 structured, actionable insights they need to take from this deep dive into Mtoto's legacy?
Okay, we need to structure this into immediate, medium, and long-term actions to make this knowledge practical.
Let's start with immediate action. What should they review this week?
Immediately, you need to review your current bull filtering system and your internal culling reports. Stop filtering exclusively for the top 50 TPI list, which is often just chasing vanity metrics.
So change the search parameters.
Exactly. Start screening the entire catalog for the Mtoto profile. Bulls with elite health traits, specifically low SCC, udder health, and lameness advantage, even if the overall PLI or TPI rank is moderate, like in the hashtag 200 to hashtag 400 range. If you're struggling with mastitis or fertility, that bull at hashtag 350 might be the one saving your farm in 2028. You need to identify your weakest link and start searching for the corrective tool.
Okay, medium-term strategy. What strategic changes should they implement over the next 3 to 6 months?
Implement corrective mating strategically. Remember, Mtoto was marketed as a high-price corrective tool, not a general-purpose sire for the entire herd. Identify specific cow families or individual cows that exhibit the Bell-era flaws, poor udders, chronic mastitis, or poor fertility.
Target the problem cows.
Right. Use the premium specialized sires, the ones that cost more, but offer high DPR or SCC only on those specific cows that need that targeted structural correction. Use the cheaper volume bulls only on your genetically sound cow families. Don't waste the specialist genetics on cows that don't need the correction.
And finally, long-term positioning. How do they align their operation for the next 1 to 2 years?
You must redefine your profit drivers. Make longevity metrics, productive life, healthy cow index, and daughter pregnancy rate the primary factors in your breeding index. You have to recognize that 2 extra profitable lactations from an invisible cow are worth far more than 500 pounds of extra milk in the first.
And what if you're using robots?
If your operation is moving toward or already uses robotic milking, Mtoto's functional type, specifically the tight udder attachment and correct, centrally placed teat position, is non-negotiable for system efficiency. Align your breeding objectives with the reality of your farm management, not the glossy magazine rankings. This has been another deep dive from the Bullvine podcast, reminding us that genetic value depends entirely on context. The bull that looks like an expensive failure on paper can, in fact, be the essential specialist who saves your herd from economic disaster. If this kind of impartial, no BS industry analysis helps your operation, head to www.thebullvine.com for more articles that tell you what's really happening in dairy genetics and management.
And seriously, subscribe wherever you get your deep dives. We're releasing episodes twice weekly now, and trust me, you don't want to miss what we've got coming next week. We're doing a comprehensive deep dive into the genetic revolution, how record-breaking milk components are reshaping dairy's future. We will focus heavily on the new Net Merit 2025 formula, why the industry is pivoting hard toward butterfat and protein yield, and why feed efficiency is not just a secondary metric anymore, but the single most crucial factor for surviving volatile input costs in the coming decade. We'll see you next time.